Good evening, everyone. This is Micah Murphy. I wanted to do a short teaching on the month of Kislev. It's a Hebrew month. It's actually the ninth month in the Hebrew tradition. We don't get really big on Hebrew stuff here, but we do believe that God still functions on a Hebrew timetable, and that he has certain months. And if you're familiar with the stories of the 12 sons of Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel in the Old Testament, there's actually a month linked to each one. And in that season, that mini season, that month, the blessing of that, the sun that is linked with that month is actually kind of like in the atmosphere if you have the faith to receive it. So I'm just going to do a short teaching. I'd like to do it every month. Right now we're in the month of Kislev, it's called. It's a link to the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin was the last son born to Jacob. And there's a lot of revelation packed up in this, because you got to remember, Jacob was in a time of grieving, because he had thought that Joseph, his son, was dead when the brothers had tried to kill him. Jacob loved Rachel more than he loved Leah, and Joseph was the first son born from Rachel. So when Jacob had his 12 sons, Leah began having children, and then her handmaid had some children. Rachel couldn't conceive, her handmaid conceived, and finally Rachel conceived. And Joseph was Jacob's 11th son. Now, Jacob had a lot of favor given to Joseph. Joseph was like the favored son. And even though he was the 11th born, he was the firstborn through Rachel. Therefore, he saw Joseph as his firstborn son. Now, back then, the firstborn got a double portion inheritance of the rest of the sons. So you hear about the coat of many colors and different things like that Joseph wore. That was a sign that he was the favored firstborn son, even though he actually wasn't born first. We actually see that pattern in all of the patriarchs' lives. Their children who ends up getting the firstborn inheritance is not the actual firstborn. And there's different reasons for that we're not going to go into today. But the other sons were jealous of Joseph. He was doted on by his father. He had a lot of favor. And so they tried to kill him. One of the brothers convinced them not to kill him, but to to leave him in a ditch and let him die. Or they ended up selling him or giving him to some travelers who were on their way to Egypt. So Jacob believed that Joseph was dead. He was in a lot of grief. So then they go and they travel, and eventually you see this pattern with the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As they travel through their lives, at times they go in and out of the land of Canaan, which is eventually the promised land, Israel. But so Jacob travels with his family, thinking Joseph is dead, into the land of Canaan, and Rachel conceives again, and she has Benjamin, which is his last son. Now, this brought Jacob a lot of joy, because he was in grief over Joseph, who came from Rachel, because he loved Rachel. So Benjamin now was kind of like the firstborn, the one that was doted on. He had a lot of favor. The other sons didn't dare touch him. They saw what grief it brought their father whenever Joseph went away and he thought it was dead. So they didn't want his father to go through that again. So they were very protective over Benjamin. But there's a lot linked up with this season, and there's a lot of revelation packed into it. Okay, so this is what happened actually when Benjamin was being born. And he was the only son born in the promised land. Okay, now that's all these things Paul tells us were types and shadows of things to come. But what they're really talking to us about is the body of Christ, is what Paul tells us. I believe it might be Colossians or Romans, he says that. But in Genesis 35, starting at verse 17 through 19, it says, "And it came to pass, when she, Rachel, was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Now, Benoni means son of my sorrow. So back then it was traditional for the women to name the children. Well, Rachel named Benjamin as she was dying in childbirth, and she named him Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. She was actually experiencing sorrow. Well, she was actually like speaking a curse over him. I don't know if that was her intention or not, but a lot of times you see them naming the children based upon what they're going through emotionally in their life at that time. If you look back and you study when Leah and the handmaidens and Rachel were having their children, they would name them based upon how they were experiencing and what they were experiencing in their relationship with God at that time or with their husband, things like that. So she names him Benoni, son of my sorrow, which is not a good name to have. It was basically a curse. This is the only time that the father, Jacob, steps in and names one of his children. So the women, his wives, named all the rest of them. This is the only one, the one being born in the promised land, that he steps in and names. And he names him Benjamin, and that means son of the right hand. That speaks of things that I'll get into later. Son of the south and son of my old age. Okay? Well, obviously, son of my old age is explainable because he was the oldest when he had him. Son of the south alludes to, I believe, that whenever the kingdom split and you had Israel in the northern kingdom and Judah in the southern kingdom, the 10 tribes went up to the northern kingdom, but Benjamin stayed in the south with Judah under the dynasty of the sons of David who would sit on the throne. So son of the south, meaning Benjamin was the only tribe that stayed in the southern kingdom with Judah. And then son of the right hand, I'll get into real quick. Paul, who ended up being the one of the latest apostles, coming to Christ in the time of the first apostolic age, and he finds out that he's not having success ministering in Jerusalem. So eventually, in the book of Acts, you can read they lower him, through a window, and they sail him back to Tarsus, where he's from. And it says the church then prospered and had peace and grew. So Paul was never meant to minister in Jerusalem. So Paul took the gospel to the ends of the earth, or it came through him in some way. And so we see son of the right hand. Well, we know that Jesus Christ sits on the right hand of the Father. So Benjamin was the tribe, basically, that the gospel first came forth out of Israel to the Gentiles from, through Paul and his companions. So we see that in play right there. We also see the name change again happen because Paul, he was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. He was taught by the greatest Pharisee of his time. I believe his name was Gamaliel, and he was on the road to being the top Pharisee. I mean, he knew the law and the scriptures more than anyone, basically, at that time. When he was blinded on the road to Damascus, Jesus changed his name, just like he changed it from Saul to Paul. Just like when Benjamin was born, he had to have a name change from Benoni to Benjamin. So the month of Kislev, which we're in right now, which today's December 7th, but it's Kislev 21st. We're in the season right now. Sagittarius is the constellation, the archer with the bow. The bow reminds us of the rainbow, which speaks of covenant with God. And also the blessings that I'm going to get into. But it's always a time of an identity change. Whenever we're in the season associated with Kislev, the month of Kislev, and under the tribe of Benjamin, it's about the change of identity. We saw it in Benjamin when he was born. His identity was changed. His name, because your name is your identity. We see this in the first king of Israel, Saul. it says that when he was anointed, that God gave him a new heart, and he went down with the prophets and began prophesying. We see he like gets a new identity. Then also we see with Saul on the road to Damascus, and then he gets a new identity named Paul. So the month of Kislev is always a transformational month. It's a transformational season for you to change and become promoted. There's always promotion involved. When you see Benoni's name being changed to Benjamin, instead of a son of sorrow, he becomes a son of strength and of the right hand of God. You see Saul being promoted from just a Benjamite farmer, I believe he was, to the king of Israel. Then you see Saul of Tarsus, his name being changed to Paul, and he's promoted to an apostle, that he says he was given more grace, which is more ability, more strength from God than any of the other apostles to do what he had to do. He wasn't bragging, he just had to have that because God used him in I don't like to use the word greater, but in a bigger way. And we know that the writings that have stayed with us of the New Testament are mostly of Paul. So usually in this time, it's a time of promotion in the spirit or in other ways, whatever your sphere is. If you're not a fivefold, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher, but you're being used in the marketplace or something like that, it's a time of promotion if you'll pass the test. Because we see that whenever the sons came back and Joseph went through an identity change, he was now Zephneah-Paneah, ruler of Egypt under Pharaoh. And Benjamin had to pass the test of coming, because he was probably very young at this time. He could have been between 8 and 12 or 14. And Joseph gave them a test before the brothers knew it was Joseph they were talking to, because now the one that they had power over them. So you see, when Joseph's identity and name changed, he was also promoted, and now he was the one with power. He could have had one of them killed just at his command, but he didn't, which is a testament to his character, that he had mercy. But he tested his sons, and he made them bring back Benjamin. Now, Benjamin had to comply with this testing. And that's what we see. So whatever tests you're going through in this month, if you pass them, there's a transformation in an identity change, a metamorphosis, like a caterpillar goes into a cocoon and becomes a butterfly. It's a promotion if you pass the test that God gives you this month. Because we also see Joseph, after he passed the test, Benjamin passed the test, Joseph gives him extra favor. He gives him 5 times the wealth of his other 10 brethren. So we see that it's a time of promotion. It's a time to get more wealth. Wealth isn't always money. Wealth can be a platform. Wealth can be more fame, influence, relationships, connections, many different things. But we do know that it's a time that when you receive your promotion, if you pass your test, you're going to get more wealth. You're going to gain more power in the ways that you need it, more provision. Now I'm going to talk about the few things I already talked about in Genesis 35 about the birth of Benjamin, but Jacob blessed Benjamin in Genesis 49:27, and he said, "Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil." Okay, so we see that raven as a wolf, that Benjamin's a mighty tribe. He has, if you think of wolf packs and how they're very smart, they're courageous. I mean, they prey on things. They're fearless. So it's like a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey. This speaks of war almost, not spiritual warfare in the sense of that you might be thinking, but that there is something that God has given you that you can pray, to eat, to get from God this season that is for you, to strengthen you. I mean, if you're devouring prey, think of a wolf devouring prey. They're doing it because they need it to be nourished. Their prey is what they need to eat. They need it to keep going and be healthy. So in this season, there's something for you to devour, for your health. It could be physical, it could be spiritual, mental, anything for you to keep moving forward. It says, and at night he shall divide the spoil, meaning the spoils are coming to you. That speaks of the wealth, the extra wealth, the 5 times wealth he received from Joseph above his brethren, if the tests are passed. That there's spoils for you this month to get in numerous ways. Power to get wealth financially, or in your physical body, or many different ways. And I'll just let the Lord and the Holy Spirit speak that to you personally. Also in this time, also I wanted to let you know the blessing that Moses gave the tribe of Benjamin in Deuteronomy 33. It said, and of Benjamin he said, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him. And the Lord shall cover him all the day long, and he shall dwell between his shoulders. So this speaks of how in this time it is a time of safety as you come to the Lord. If you're in fear, don't fear. Like before Rachel gave birth to Benjamin, her handmaiden said, fear not, you shall have this son. It's a time, it's a blessing of safety when you receive the blessing of Benjamin. Talks about the Lord covering him all the day long. The Lord is your protection. The Lord is your guard. And he shall dwell between his shoulders. You'll always be with the Lord. The Lord is carrying you. The Lord is with you. It's a wonderful blessing. It's a blessing of intimacy with God. Beloved of the Lord is part of the blessing. So it's just really awesome. In this time, the Hebrews, and we're not Hebrew, and I don't believe in going back and becoming Hebrew, because now God has torn the middle wall of partition down between the Jews and the Gentiles to create one new man, which is the body of Christ. We have been grafted into the seed of Abraham if we believe in Jesus, and so we have his promises that are available to us. But I just want to say some things, and they can minister to you. And if you believe the Old Testament's not for us anymore, Paul just said, let every man be fully convinced in his own mind. I do want to say that I believe that there are some things in the Old Testament we can definitely learn from, and some things that God still has for us if you'll reach out and have the faith for it. In fact, the way that I got hooked up with Chuck Pierce and his ministry years ago was the fact that I was receiving revelation I'd never heard before about the stars and the constellations. And my mother and one of her friends, who are a part of the ministry now, told me that Chuck Pierce has revelation like this, and that's what merged us together, and now it became part of Global Spheres Incorporated. But I'm going to read a little bit about Hanukkah real quick, which the Jews celebrate during this time. And it's usually from Kislev 25th. And by the way, in Jewish in the Jewish tradition, the 25th would actually start on our night of the 24th at 6 p.m. And then it goes to Tevet 3, so it actually goes into the next month. But it's a festival. But it's the only festival that isn't in the Bible, but it is something that they celebrate, and Jesus even celebrated Hanukkah. But I'll just read a little bit about it real quick. Hanukkah is a Jewish festival commemorating the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem at the time of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire. It is also known as the Festival of Lights. Hanukkah is observed for 8 days and nights starting on the 25th of Kislev, according to the Hebrew calendar, which may occur at any time from late November to late December in the Gregorian calendar, which is our calendar. The festival is observed by lighting the candles of a candelabrum, which is the big thing you see with the candles on it, with 9 branches called a menorah. That's a menorah. And one branch is typically placed above or below the other, and its candle is used to light the other 8 candles. This unique candle is called the shamash. Each night, one additional candle is lit by the shamash until all 8 candles are lit together on the final night of the festival. Other Hanukkah festivities include playing the game of the dreidel and eating oil-based foods such as latkes and dairy foods, and I can't pronounce that other one. This is from Wikipedia, by the way. English translation of Hanukkah could also be establishing or dedication, okay, of the temple in Jerusalem. But we have become the temple of God now. Under the new covenant, God no longer dwells in a temple made with man's hands. So think of your temple, God's temple, being established in rededication. It's a time of intimacy with the Lord, establishing you. So wanted to share that. And I also wanted to share this. I found this very interesting real quick. It's the arching bow is the constellation. It speaks of the covenant, the covenantal sign of the rainbow that God gave Noah to remind us of that. And then I found this interesting, that there are some certain females, and they're called the four women of light. And this is just Jewish tradition, but the second book of the Maccabees records cases of Jews who chose to die rather than submit to the Syrians. A celebrated martyr is referred in the Talmud as Miriam, but the first century historian Josephus identifies her as Hannah. And Hannah's expressed unfaltering faith as God as she was forced to watch her 7 sons die for refusing to bow to an idol, and then she killed herself. Hannah's martyrdom raises the issue of supreme sacrifice for religion. We might ask ourselves where we would draw that line today. Hannah also calls upon us to hold in our hearts those mothers in every generation who must give up their children to war. We are reminded in particular about mothers in Israel today. And then in Jewish legend, they have the four women of light, Sarah, who, according to legend, she lit candles at the beginning of Shabbat, which is the day of rest, and miraculously the flame burned throughout the entire week in the tents of Abraham and Isaac. Rebecca inherited the task of lighting these candles when Sarah died. Because Rebecca was also a righteous woman, her candle light shined throughout the entire week as Sarah's had. This is just, legend, but it's widely held as something that actually happened. Queen Esther was known as the morning star, who had brought a bright, rekindled spirit to the Jews after the dark night of suffering. And whenever she was brought before the king and delivered the Jews. Deborah was also a wise and important judge who lived in the 12th century before Christ. In the Torah, Deborah is referred to as the woman of the Lapidot. In Hebrew, Lapid means torch or flame. So the Talmud refers to Deborah as a woman of flames. A contemporary midrash teaches that Deborah made candle wicks which lit before fire ever touched them. The candles were illuminated from the light inside of Deborah, which grew as she grew. Now that's just legend. We don't know if that happened, but you might still find it interesting. But I just wanted to make it known that right now, in this month of Kislev, is a time of transformation. It's a time of coming close to God, feeling His love. It's a time of increased favor. It's a time of identity change. And as your identity changes, as you pass whatever tests are given to you in this season, you'll be promoted. Promoted in the Spirit, promoted in different ways. And with that promotion will come spoils, extra wealth of many different forms and connections. Sometimes connections as wealth, platforms, influence, money, anything. And just see it as a time of joy and celebration of what Jesus has done for us. And I just wanted to bring that to you. We'll be going into the month of Tevet on the 16th of December, which I believe is linked with the tribe of Reuben. But so right now, that's it. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, share, comment below, share on all your social platforms, and also subscribe to sonsofgod.net. So this is Micah Murphy signing off from the New Structure Ministries.